I'm just trying to decide if I'm comfortable even talking about that.
This one's wife. That's such a great question. Why she does it. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. This one's wife was recently interviewed in a complete soft soap fawning interview by the CEO of Time magazine. It was excruciating to watch. And in part of that, this one's wife responded to a question by saying, "That's such a great question." And she's done this before. There have been numerous instances where she's taken a Q&A, for instance, from fans. She wouldn't do it from just general members of the public because that would threaten her need for control. And she has doled out the "that's such a great question." Naturally, this has led people to wonder, why does she do it? After all, she will know in advance what question she's going to be asked. The narcissist that she is, her need for control is such that she's only ever going to take questions which have been vetted or questions that she has submitted and said, "You can ask me about these things." That not only allows her to maintain control by weeding out any potential threats with somebody asking her difficult questions, but it also aids her in talking about herself, talking about the things that she wants to talk about, namely herself or what she is up to, allowing her to assert control through that means and draw fuel by way of the responses and to manage her facade. While she's far from alone in behaving this way, there are many individuals that will only ever take vetted questions or placed questions for the purposes of ensuring that their Q&A runs smoothly. We know that this one's wife does it because of her narcissism. But it then leads to the inevitable question of, why is she saying it's such a great question when she invariably knows what she's going to be asked in advance, or indeed, her question is one of her own. She has invented the question, which has been given to the interviewer to ask her. Is it the case that she's praising herself for asking such a great question? Is this yet another example of the self-absorption of this mediocre narcissist? Well, you could be forgiven for thinking that would be the case, but actually it's not. Now, in some instances, many people will say that's such a great question because what they're doing is seeking to buy themselves a bit of time. They perhaps have been asked something that requires a little bit of thought, and rather than sit with an awkward silence, and remember, a silence of just a few seconds in an interview situation seems to last a long time, the individual offers that little bit of praise in order to buy themselves some time to provide an answer. In other instances, it might be genuine, that the interviewee does really think that it is a great question and wants to say as such. They think, this is interesting. This is stimulating. I'm going to make the point that that's a really good question. But what about this one's wife? Where does she fall? Is she praising herself? Is she buying time? Is it simply the case that she's wanting to denote that it really is a good question? Well, first of all, I think it's fair to say that the questions that she gets asked in an interview are not great questions. Why? Because they're tedious, they're soft soap, and they're boring. Nobody so far has asked the questions that people really want to hear answers to. Nobody asks the challenging questions because, of course, as a controlling narcissist, she never puts herself in a position of being asked those questions. Instead, it's simply a platform for her to issue a word salad, to wank on about herself, to spout nonsense about what she's been doing, to talk about how wonderful a girl boss she is, what an insightful businesswoman she is, what a bananitarian she is, what a charitable overlord that she is, what a wonderful employer she is, what a wonderful mother she is, what an industrious content creator she is, whatever it might be. The question is invariably just teeing up a platform for this one's wife to show off about herself, and therefore they are never great questions. Might it be the case that this one's wife is buying herself some time? Well, it's possibly the case that would occur if she might get asked something she wasn't prepared for. And invariably, she's never asked something that's horribly difficult because the person that is interviewing her has been chosen on the basis that they're going to create a good interview for her. But they might ask her a question which is a question which is not particularly challenging or forensic or would be viewed as hostile, but nevertheless requires some thought. And in such instances, there would be occasions where this one's wife could well say, "That's such a great question," in order to buy herself a bit of time, because as we all know, she's not particularly bright, she's not particularly imaginative, and it might be done as a stalling tactic to deal with the threat to control, to allow her narcissism to find something by way of an answer. More usually, however, the reason why she says, "That's such a great question," is that it's a simple manipulation. As I explained earlier, she is either dealing with an interviewer that's going to give her an easy ride, or she already knows what the questions are, or at least the topics that are going to be spoken about. And therefore, in the circumstances, when she's asked a question that she already knows is coming, then she doesn't need to stall for time. And furthermore, what she's actually doing is praising the interviewer. Remember, in that moment, she has to assert control over the interviewer and also any audience that happens to be watching or listening. And therefore, her narcissism chooses as manipulation flattery. That's such a great question. And she says that in order to assert control over the person that's asking the question and also over the audience, to make it look like she's a kind person by praising the person for asking the question. It isn't the case that she's praising herself, because in that moment, even though she may well have devised the questions and handed them to the interviewer, or her people have done so, in the moment that she's being asked the question, that prior act is forgotten about. It's dissipated into the ether. And because, like any other narcissist, this one's wife acts in the moment, her narcissism treats it as if she is being asked a question that she didn't know had been teed up. That is the fabrication of the existence of the narcissist. That even though she knows what she's going to be asked, even though she may well have written out the questions that have been given to the interviewer, when it comes for the question to be asked of her, her narcissism treats it as if this is the first time she's ever been asked this by this particular interviewer, that she wasn't aware of this coming to her because of the compartmentalization that the narcissism engages in. And therefore, in order to make herself look good and to assert control over the interviewer, she just offers this little bit of praise by saying, "That's such a great question." To all of you, you're well versed in the fact that she writes the questions herself, that she's getting an easy ride, and therefore it seems ridiculous that she would say that, because they never are great questions. But once again, it's another form of manipulation utilised by this particular narcissist to gain control and fuel, even though it's not particularly relevant. Here, she uses simple flattery. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.